Yeah, like you can have talent at something, but yeah, a gift is like a purpose, and you have a responsibility to that gift, to cultivate it, to take care of it, nurture it.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Prestige Living Podcast. So with that, who do you want to be?
Hello, welcome to Prestige Living, where we interview the risk takers and business owners of Orange County. I'm your host, Jay O'Brien, here with your co-hosts, Jordan Wilson.
Yes.
And Kane German. J Dubs. Today we are interviewing our very first professional athlete. He launched a career in Major League Baseball in 1999 and segued into the realm of real estate investing in 2010. He's a leader in the community and is highly recognized across the country. Without further ado, I give you Gary Matthews Jr. Thank you. Welcome to the show, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Dude, thanks for being on the show. We appreciate your time.
Yeah,
so
thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I want you to take me through the beginning. The whole idea of becoming a professional athlete, I think every kid dreams of that, right?
Yeah,
so how did this happen for you?
Oh, man. So, my name is Gary Matthews Jr., but my father clearly is Gary Sr., and my father was a professional baseball player. He played the Sarge, had a 16 or 17 year career. He's still involved in a game to this day, but he was my first influence. Like most young boys, my father taught me the game, taught me how to play, and I loved it. Most kids, they grow up wanting to be a fireman or a police officer. Maybe they have an uncle who does something special, and that's your first influence. That's what you want to be when you grow up.
Right.
My father happened to be a professional baseball player, and he started out with San Francisco, went to Atlanta, Chicago, Philadelphia, ended his career with Seattle, and was an all-star in 78 or 79. So, he had a really good career. And he was my first influence, so that's how it started. And, if you ask my parents what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do when I grew up, it was baseball player. I would have told you that at 4 years old, and even at 4, I knew that's what I was going to do. And I know, kids say all kinds of crazy things, right?
Right.
But at 4 or 5 years old,
right,
I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so people will ask me, they'll say, well, you played for such a long time. You started when you were a kid. How old were you when you knew you were going to make it? And when I was about 10 years old is when I could really understand what the game was all about as far as winning and losing World Series championships. My father was playing on a really good team, the 84 Cubs. I was 10 years old at the time. And that team had a really special year, went to the playoffs. They really should have won a championship, should have met the Detroit Tigers in the 84 World Series. And as you know, they won the first 2 games or 3 games. They needed to win one more game, and Steve Garvey and the rest of the San Diego Padres went absolutely crazy and won every game the rest of the series, and the Cubs were out of it. But that's when I realized I just loved the game. I loved the aspect of preparing for something every day, having a job, having a team of people that you were doing it with, and you get to play a game every day and go out and play in front of a crowd, and I loved it. So at 10 years old, I started to recognize that there was something about it that I really loved, the essence of it, and not just the glitz and the glamour and the fans and money and cars and all the things young men can be attracted to. I loved the work associated with it. I loved the preparation. I loved the camaraderie of the team and knowing that you had people that you could rely on to help you through it. And now that I think back, it's those lessons that I loved and learned early on that really took me through the rest of my career and even outside of retirement. I still apply those same principles I learned at 4 or 5 years old to my life today.
Sure. I mean, being a kid, too, I think a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm going to be a professional athlete, and they aspire to be that way at a really young age. Your dad being a pro at that time, it's probably different. Like there's usually a lot of resistance, right? With parents who are like, oh, well, that's really far fetched, or that's probably not going to happen. Did you have more support from your dad?
No, there was resistance. My father graduated from San Fernando High School in '68. Only went to high school, never went to college. And when he left his career in '87 or '88, there was an adjustment period. And my father talked about the struggle of not having his education, not having saved exactly as much as he wanted to. And, when you go through a divorce or two, that creates, some different aspects. But my father was really open about what he could have done better. And because of that, he felt his education was key. He felt he should have gone to college, and he didn't, even though he had this wonderful career and things turned out great for him. He wanted me to focus on my career. And so there was quite a bit of resistance. And right around the time I was 15, and we recognized maybe I was probably 14. It was my freshman year in high school. I'll never forget it. We were in the summer, and I was about to go back to school, and I would spend my summers with my fathers normally, and then I would come back here to Los Angeles and start the school year. And so, as I normally was, I was in Chicago for the summer. Summer's getting ready to end, and I come home, and my parents are divorced. My mom was in LA, my dad's in Chicago, and along with my stepmom. And so I came home from a camp one day towards the end of the summer, and my mom is in Chicago. And I'm like, whoa, what's my mom doing here? Honestly, I remember thinking that someone must have died. So my father calls me in the office and sits me down, and he says, I'm like, hi, Mom. She's like, hi. My mom's got this look on her face like there is some grim news. She's, no eye contact. My stepmom sitting on the couch next to my mom. And my father says, you're going to transfer schools. And I said, okay, that's it. Great. I'm fine with it. Mom flew all the way out to Chicago just to give me this news. My father says, well, there's something else. And I'm like, what is it? And he says, there's no baseball team. And I said, oh, no, I'm not. I'm not. And my parents, my stepmom, my mother, and my father said, listen, we just want you to focus on your education for a year. Baseball will always be there. Your father wishes he would have focused more on his academics and school, and we want you to do that. We feel your focus is too much on sports and the game, and like any teenager, you go through whatever you got to go through to get what you want. And I laid it on thick. I pulled out the tears and everything. I'm like, you taught me this game. How could you? If you didn't intend for me to play this game, you should have never taught me. And I broke him down. I made my dad cry.
It's like the one example where they don't want you to take over the family business.
Oh,
right, yeah.
Right? And I'll never forget it. And so my dad cried and I cried, and he said, well, if you really want this, then maybe I think you got to move back to California to play every day, because it's just impossible in Chicago. And so at 14, that was when my family got on board with me and supported it 100% and said, okay, we'll let him take a run at this. And that year, I was around 14. I started the school year. I turned 15 in August. And at that point, that's when it changed. My father got more involved as far as being a coach to me. My father had always taken a hands-off approach and, taught me how to play the game the right way, but didn't want to put pressure on me, and really kind of took a back seat to my coaches. But at that point, I hit 15, and we kind of kicked it in a high gear, and the rest is, as they say, is history. 4 years later, I was signing my first professional contract, and 2 years after that, I got drafted. I got drafted at 17, and I was so young at the time. I wasn't ready, so we didn't sign. But 2 years after that conversation, I was drafted by the Minnesota Twins. The next year after that, I was drafted by San Diego. San Diego owns your rights till the hour of the next draft. And my father brokered a deal because he felt like San Diego would be kind of weak in the outfield. They felt Tony Gwynn would his career. By the time I was ready, my father felt Tony Gwynn would be getting older. Steve Finley, Reggie Sanders, Ricky Henderson, and that's exactly the way that worked out. So 4 years later, I was creeping on the major leagues, and so this was the plan all along. And I was really fortunate that things worked out the way that they did. I never had any significant injuries. So many guys, I mean, whether it's injuries or
Right.
Being young and not having the ability to focus and manage your time right as young men, I never experienced any of those things. I was really blessed, really lucky.
So when you were in high school and you're on the baseball team and stuff, are your peers seeing you as like a future pro? I mean, because a lot of people like that are there. Sometimes they're like, I'm just doing baseball because I don't want to be in PE
Right.
or whatever. and then there's other people who are like, oh yeah, like, well, I want to be a pro, and people are like, yeah, well, yeah, that'd be a nice thought.
Yeah.
But I mean, how were you looked at? Did you stand out that early on?
I was doing things at 5 years old that I shouldn't be doing. As far as being gifted physically, at 5 years old, I could do things that, I could probably play with. I wasn't strong at 5 years old, but I could have played with, 8 to 10-year-olds at that point. I really could have. I was really advanced. I knew the game. I could just see things just that kids at 5 years old can't see. And that was just a result of being around the game so much. And so I did have, I had high school teammates who were, you go through some periods where there's some jealousy and where how teenagers are,
Right.
what it's like in high school. And no one's shielded from, the stuff that young teenagers go through in high school. But as I got older, I recognized that I had an opportunity to help my teammates and kind of help them see what I see on the field. And at first, you really, when you deal with some of those things, you're kind of taken aback. And, you have teammates who are jealous, and even coaches and other parents who are jealous, but you don't recognize that as a teenager. And so there is, I won't call it bullying, because by and large, I had a great experience in high school. But I definitely look back and I experienced some things from teammates or from parents and even some coaches that maybe would definitely be questionable today. But my father helped me through it, and he said, listen, you are in a position that they're just not experienced with. You're 14 years old, 15 years old, and you see things that even a coach doesn't see, and that's intimidating for a coach. And I was a really humble kid, but I didn't lack for confidence, and I knew what I saw on a field. And if I saw something that maybe the coaches didn't see, I would tell them that. And so maybe that's not exactly.
Yeah, they felt threatened.
Did you get any of that? Get out of here, kid.
Yeah, it's they feel like it's you're maybe being disrespectful when you're really not. I'm just telling. I'm a 15-year-old kid telling you what I see on a play, and so there's some. It takes some time to recognize how to deal with those things as a coach, and it takes some time to deal with it as a player. And so I learned that I had an opportunity to not only kind of show things to my coaches, but also my teammates. And so I had to learn to kind of endear myself to them and kind of bring them into my world and help them and show them what I saw. And so my junior and senior year, especially my senior year, I became accepted by my teammates, and because I was bringing professional scouts out that were seeing them that they otherwise, they wouldn't get exposure. So at that point, because I'm so talented, they're getting quite a bit of exposure from professional scouts in colleges that they otherwise may not have gotten if I wasn't there. And so there was some appreciation. It gets better with time, but that is all part of one, being really gifted at a young age, but also being talented. And there's some growing pains associated with it. But I think if you're humble, you're focused, you can find your way through it.
So how was the first time you played in front of tens of thousands of people?
Being a second-generation player, I remember my father, his team, his 84 Cubs, getting beat by the San Diego Padres. in the playoffs and ruining their season, their storybook Cinderella season. And that was at Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego, which is now Qualcomm Stadium. So that was 84, and fast forward 15 years later, and who am I drafted by? The San Diego Padres, team I hated for all these years.
Right.
And where do I play my first major league game and seeing that stadium for the first time in 15 years?
Wow.
In Qualcomm Stadium.
So it's bittersweet.
It was. It's all sweet at that point. It's just really surreal. To have seen your father play in that very stadium. You haven't been in the stadium in 15 years, and the next time you're in that stadium, you're standing in the same spot where you saw your father play. It's
that's
really cool.
Really surreal.
Yeah.
And I remember playing my first game, and all night I wasn't nervous. I'd been there before. I grew up in this business. And the first time I got nervous all night, it was a Friday night, I think, and we had fireworks night. And this is really a football stadium. So there's 60,000 seats or close to it in that stadium. Most major league parks are 30, 35,000 now. But there's 60,000 seats in Qualcomm Stadium. And we're up by maybe a run. And Trevor Hoffman comes into the game, and Trevor Hoffman has an intro. Most closers, they were just hitting that point where they're starting to have an intro song. And Trevor Hoffman, who's one of the best closers ever the game's ever seen, his intro song is AC/DC's Hell's Bells.
Dun.
Yes. You ever been in Qualcomm Stadium when those bells go off? They played his song and the bells go off. And 60,000 people went crazy.
Wow.
And that was the first time I got nervous all night. I mean, heart pumping, knees shaking, hands shaking.
Yeah.
And it was the first time all night I thought, oh my gosh, please don't hit it to me.
Yeah. Have your nerves ever gotten the best of you where you've actually haven't been able to perform because you were nervous?
That moment, I was really, really nervous, and typical of a young player. But I thought, oh man, I started my first game, wasn't nervous, I was good. And there was something about those pressure moments where the lights seem really bright, it gets hot, the crowd, 60,000 people. Oh yeah, you're sweating, but that's typical for a young player in those nervous situations where the nerves come up. There's a pressure situation, game on the line. And as you get older, you learn to kind of bottle or temper the adrenaline and kind of use it. You just focus on your breathing. You acknowledge to yourself that, there's some pressure right now. I hear the crowd. The crowd's lighter, and there's a bunch of people in here. And, we're down a run, and I have a chance to win it. You got to acknowledge all those things. Step out of the box, look around, and acknowledge it. Take a deep breath, control your breathing, and step back in and do your thing. But those are all part of the game.
I mean, you're a team when you're out there. So when everyone's like looking down, 60,000 people or whatever, you're all out there on the field. But when the ball goes up and is going in your direction, then everyone's looking at you.
Sure. 120,000 eyeballs.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you're really gifted and talented and feel you belong out there, you're used to feeling like there's eyes on you. Every time I step into the box or step out on that field, I feel like all eyes are on me, or at least they should be.
How'd you do your first time in the box?
Oh man, I think I flew out to right field. I think I was facing Jimmy Key, left-hander. I think he was with Seattle at the time, and I think I flew out to right field. I went over 2 in my first game with a walk or 2. Stole home in my first major league game on a double steal at home plate. And then I got my first hit the next day off of Freddie Garcia, big Venezuelan right-hander. He used to throw about 95 mile an hour sinker. I got my first hit off him.
Wow.
Damn, dude. I can't even. Yeah. And last time I went to the batting cages like 5 years ago, and I had trouble just hitting like 45 miles an hour. I was like, damn, sports are not for me. But you said gifted intelligent twice already. How do you differentiate the two? Because everybody will kind of lump those up in one.
You know, I don't know what if you look up the difference between talented and gifted in the dictionary, everyone has a certain talent, right? I mean, everyone has a talent. But I think when you're gifted, there's something extraordinary about it. And, I talk to my son all the time about, finding your gift, right? We can all be talented. Someone could be talented about juggling, right? Mm-hmm. You could be talented in art, drawing art. But, I feel like a gift is something you develop and cultivate, and it's something that's been given to you, whether you believe in a higher power, God, Buddha, whatever it is that you believe in. A gift is something that you've been given that I think you have a responsibility to take care of and to cultivate. And I think for me, when I think of that, that's the difference between the two. We have a responsibility to cultivate and take care of our gift.
The talent is what you work for, and gift is your purpose. Or...
Yeah, like you can have talent at something, but a gift is like a purpose, and you have a responsibility to that gift, to cultivate it, to take care of it, nurture it. And I tell my son all the time. My son's 16. He's a student at Corona Del Mar High School. He'll be going out for the basketball team this year. I tell him, I said, don't waste your gift. There's nothing in the world worse than someone who has a gift and decides to waste it, not cultivate it. And, we've had discussions. My son, he loves sports documentaries, and he's watching Allen Iverson is huge for him right now. Kobe Bryant, Mike Tyson, and you look at the story of Mike Tyson, and he's had an amazing gift, right? You wouldn't consider Mike Tyson just to be talented, right? You'd say he had a gift, right? And he had an amazing career, meteoric rise to become heavyweight champion at 20 years old, and we all know his story, but I think it's an amazing story because I'm a huge Mike Tyson fan also. But, this is a guy who started out, he really cultivated his gift. This guy was, looked at a lot of old school video of like Jack Johnson and Dempsey. And so I talked to my son about cultivating your gift, whatever it is. I mean, sometimes it takes us a while to find it, but more times than not, like you got a gift, right? But you know what it is, and wherever you are in life, you kind of I think there's this fear associated with not being able to accomplish what you want to with that gift, and so a lot of people are kind of frozen with this fear that they're going to fail, and so they choose not to cultivate their gift. So the thing with my son right now is, whatever your gift is, you got to be willing to take the chance, put it out there, cultivate it, nurture it. Don't waste it. I tell him, I said, listen, don't be the guy who at the end of, you get in your mid-20s and you got to look yourself in the mirror and say to yourself that you didn't give it 100% or that you weren't prepared. I tell him I can live with failure because all of us at some point are going to fail. But I said, don't be the guy that's got to look himself in the mirror and say you didn't give 100%, you didn't give your full effort, and you weren't prepared. Don't be that guy.
What do you think your son's gift is?
I don't think he finds it. I don't think he's found it yet. He loves basketball, and that's it. Professional sports is such a difficult thing to have success in because you're navigating so many things that you can't control. You can't always control playing time. You can't control injuries. You can't always control opportunities. There's so many things that have to work out right in order for professional sports to work out. And being 41 now, I can absolutely see why my father, all those years ago, sat me down and said he didn't want me to play professional sports. I get it now.
How'd
100%.
you handle that that level of fame and like socially when you were out in places and people were recognizing you and asking for autographs? And I'm sure there's a lot of haters that came out of the woodworks too, like people that, you know, for as much as people end up loving someone, there's always the crowd that doesn't like them. But I mean, even the good stuff and the bad stuff, how did you adjust to all that?
I was really lucky. I have parents who, because I was a second generation player, parents who set this up really early on, and they said, listen, professional sports, it's not forever. And baseball is the family business. This is what we do for a living. And they separated the two, and they said, look, this over here, this is baseball. In your career, you have to interact with fans, front office, media, and you have to give a certain portion of yourself to that. And that's temporary. That's not forever. This over here, this is family. This household, this family structure, this is forever. And at some point, this will be all you have. And my parents, my mother, my father, my stepmom, my grandparents, we sat down and we actually had this conversation. So they let me recognize early on that at some point this was going to change. The fame goes away, people asking for your autograph goes away, the attention, all those things at some point will change, and it doesn't happen as much. But family's forever. And so, you know, I never forgot that. And my family also never, I was never like treated special. I had a special gift, but I was never treated special. You know,
you never felt like a different part of the family
parents,
or something.
They didn't differentiate between my brothers and I, and my sister, and their talents or their gifts. There was none of that. You know, I worked hard, but I had errands and chores to do just like the rest of the kids. And you know, sometimes in families, the athlete, right, takes a precedence over all the other kids and their activities and things that they have going on. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Families do what they feel they need to do. But my parents decided to do it a different way. And it's worked out perfect for me. And really what it's helped me do is take the shift back once I retired. You know, I was able to kind of navigate retirement a lot better, because there is a period where there's some emotional frailness and you're missing the game and you're wondering, you know, am I ready to retire? Is this really what I want to do? And for a lot of professional athletes or entertainers, you know, when they're no longer playing or an actor or entertainer isn't as quote unquote hot anymore,
right?
You know, there's an adjustment. There's an adjustment financially. There's an adjustment emotionally. And my parents prepared me for that really early on, and really became so helpful. And as a matter of fact, when my father retired, my father went and saw a therapist, and he sat me down and he talked to me about it. I was 13 or 14 when my father retired, and he sat me down and we had a discussion. He said he was going to seek some help and talk to a therapist, that there wasn't anything wrong with him, but he just wanted me to know that he was going to seek some help and talk about specifically, you know, how he felt about retirement and the fact that he wasn't getting the attention that he once got, and it was foreign to him, and he felt he wanted to be proactive. And so when I retired or was having those feelings about retirement, I went and did the same thing. You know, my father really set up a blueprint for my whole career, how to prepare for the major leagues, how to get to the major leagues, how to stay, and how to exit. And
your parents seem very wise. I mean, like, this is a lot of proactive behavior, and like with all the setups and everything, I feel like, you know, in the entertainment industry or music or sports, like I doubt anyone really ever got that, you know? I mean, you kind of just...
They didn't want to do the Brett Favre move of retiring 3 times and coming back and all that.
You know, it was always my goal to walk away, to not make some announcement. I wanted to leave the game before it left me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's really the way that it ended up working out. And in 2010, I was traded to New York. I played the 2010 season in New York with the Mets. We were great people over there. I've still got some great friends over there. But at the time, we were somewhat of a fractured organization. There was the whole Bernie Madoff stuff going on,
Yep.
where our owner had invested some money with Madoff, and they were talking about him possibly, maybe not making payroll. I mean, it was crazy stuff going on during the week. And, Major League Baseball would never let that happen, but there was talk about it. And not only was there that stuff going on, we were just a really bad team. I feel horrible saying it, but we were a bad team at the time. And I went from playing with the Angels, making the playoffs every year, perennial winners in the American League West, to bottom dwelling in the National League East. And that was really different for me. I was away from my daughter. My daughter was in Arizona, but she could come out for visits quite often because I was in California. My son was living here in California. And after that 2010 season, I still had another year left on my contract with New York. And I decided I needed to, take some time and spend some time with my kids and decide if I really wanted to continue to do this. And so what really sealed the deal was I sat down with my son and my daughter, and I asked them, I said, Daddy's thinking about retiring. How do you feel about it? What do you think? And my son's like, yeah, I've had enough. Let's retire. My son was all about retirement. And my daughter, who was so young at the time, she's probably 5 years old when I retired. I asked her how she felt. I said, what do you think, Kennedy? And she says, Daddy, she's like, I think you should keep playing, because then, when I miss you, I can turn on the TV like I always do. And so
damn.
my daughter, and that was that sealed the deal for me. My daughter, she was so young, she didn't understand that retiring would mean more time for us.
Yeah.
She was just thinking about me
Cam, are you
being
crying over there?
No.
she was just thinking about New York and the fact that, she really missed me. And, so when she missed me, she would turn on the TV at night and be able to see me play a game on TV. And that's how she dealt with it. And so that was the end of it. And I still had some left in the tank. I continued to get calls. Gosh, I got a call from the Washington Nationals in 2013. And I had been retired for 3 years already. And so, physically, I wasn't done, but emotionally, I needed some new challenges. I wanted to spend more time with my kids. I wanted to be present. And there were some things that were just changing in the game. I had accomplished a lot of things, but emotionally, there were some things that were changing. And I think when you're putting so much into a sport, and you're not getting out of it what you put into it. We're talking 2 to 3 workouts a day during the off season. Your diet, it's not just the physical commitment, but that is an emotional commitment. When you've got this lifestyle of working out and eating right and being so regimented for, I signed in 94 and retired in 2011. It's like 17 years of doing that. And so I was ready for some changes, and really that is what led me to real estate. And so I took a year off and decided to kind of take some new challenges. And my grandfather on my mother's side was in commercial real estate and owned strip malls in the San Fernando Valley, when it wasn't in owned strip malls. I mean, this was during the 70s when he first started out. And so I always knew eventually I would kind of try my hand at it and get into real estate somehow. And that's really what led me to real estate, was when I took a year off from playing in 2010, and I bought a property in Dolphin Terrace in Orange County in Corona Del Mar. And I had a lot. We tore down a house, and I started working on this project with Carlton Graham, who's an architect out of Laguna Beach, who went to University of Texas in Austin, which has one of the most renowned architectural schools in the nation. Extremely talented. And so we sat down, and I told him what I'd been thinking. I told him that I grew up in a mid-century contemporary Joseph Eichler house. And I'd always wanted to do a kind of organic contemporary house. Mm-hmm. And that's where it started for me. So when I was taking that year off from the game, I sat down with Carlton Graham. We brought in Michael Fullen from Michael Fullen Design Group. He's out of Laguna Beach also. And the builder was Steve Davidson. And I spent the next 3 years working on this house. It was 6,300 square feet under the roof, and with all the terraces and everything, it might be close to 8,500 or 9,000 or something like that. But that's what I did with my next 3 years, and really even that helped me ease into retirement because I had something to focus on every day. So I really took a hands-on approach to this. A lot of people buy a property, start building a house, and they're involved, but they're not out there every day. And I was just so used to a regimented lifestyle that had a lot of order in it, that this just going out to the site every day, watching the house being built, meeting with the subcontractors and the architect, this was what I did every day. And I found that I really loved it. Yeah.
So what's your day-to-day look like now?
So it depends on whether it's summer or the fall. When my kids are out of school, I really try and be present, and I spend loads of time with the kids. And I've gotten to a point where I've done a couple houses in Corona Del Mar. I've bought my neighbors' homes, and we tear them down and do rebuilds. And so normally I would go out to the sites and check everything out at some point during the day. But this is just like when I was playing. I've taken the same approach. So I still get up in the morning, I go work out. Now it's a little bit looser. There's not 3 workouts a day anymore.
Yep.
But I get up, grab some breakfast, grab my son, and we go and get a workout in together. And the workouts are intense. And I finish up and start checking my emails. I try and get my calls into the East Coast. And we talked before we started, but I have a property in New York in Stella Tower, and that was finished up in February. And so I talked to my real estate agent out there, who keeps an eye on different opportunities on the East Coast. And this is just all part of a diversified portfolio. I've got some properties on the West Coast. I've got a property on the East Coast in New York, and I'm really lucky to be part of a group. I don't do this on my own, but I'm part of a group of guys who we own and develop Courtyard Marriott. So we have 2 Courtyard Marriotts, and we have a Spring Hill Suite. And I think we just recently sold a Burbank property, but we have one in Pasadena, and we have one in Wailea in Hawaii under construction. And so those are a little bit more hands off for me. We're more on the investor side, but we all own a percentage of these hotels, and really lucky to get in with a group of guys, but who are honest. They do what they say they can do, and the properties get brought in on time, and they spit out really good passive income, which is great for a professional athlete. And I try and keep it simple, but keep it diversified, and I try and enjoy what I do.
Yeah, so that's the segue from professional sports to real estate.
You like that?
I like
Perfect.
it.
Yeah. This is perfect.
I like that.
You must have been interviewed once or twice.
So I've got a question. I mean, we're kind of wrapping up here, but I have a question. Jordan and I were looking at this video.
Well, so before you walked in, I showed Jay on YouTube. I said, I just put in Gary Matthews Jr. catch. Because I was going to ask one of my questions for you was going to be, having, like, now that you know that I showed Jay that video, what was your favorite baseball memory in your professional career? Was it that catch, or was it some other thing that you're extremely proud of, or just a memorable moment?
I have so many. Yeah, I've been so blessed, guys. Like it's like a storybook. Look, when you look back at my numbers, you'll look at my numbers, and I'm not going to be a Hall of Famer, right? And I'm not going to be remembered as I'm not going to be among the best players ever. But when you consider the whole story in its totality, just the odds of being a kid who had a father who was a professional athlete, like that's extremely rare in itself. And for us both to become all-stars, and I guess the most surreal thing that's ever happened to me was playing in Dodger Stadium. And that's sensitive talk around this area in Orange County because there's so many Angels fans. I played for the Angels.
You're sitting next to them.
I still follow the guys, and I love the guys. But when I think about baseball, I think about Wrigley Field. And I think about my own personal experience growing up and seeing my dad play at home here in LA, because my father, no matter where he was playing, he would come out to LA, and so the whole family would be at the 3 or 4 game series at Dodger Stadium. So I have these really strong, vivid, and emotional memories of Dodger Stadium. And so I remember being in Dodger Stadium and walking into the stadium with my uncles, right? And sitting in the stands and watching my father play out in center field or left field for the Cubs. And I remember, it's probably 2010. I'm standing out in center field before a game starts, and all the fans are coming into the stadium. And in Dodger Stadium, the family section is still in the same place that it was when my father played. So I'm standing in center field. This is literally minutes before the game's starting. The pitcher's warming up. I've just thrown the ball in to one of the kids down the line.
Right.
So I've got about 2 minutes to kind of get my breathing in check and check out the atmosphere, look at positioning of players and stuff like that. And I'm standing out in center field, and I look up into the family section, and I can see my brother walking down with my son, who's probably 9 or 10 at the time.
Wow.
And just unbelievable deja vu
right.
Comes over me, and these emotions come over me, because it was 15 years ago that I was walking down the aisle with my uncle to watch my father play, and now my son is walking down the aisle with his uncle, who's my brother, to watch me play. And I started tearing up out in center field, and I think about it now and it makes me emotional. But
right.
I've had so many experiences, and so you would think that I think back and my strongest memories would be a catch,
the highlight reel,
which is unbelievable, or playing in the All-Star game. But really, there are those special quiet moments, before a game, and watching my son walk down the aisle of Dodger Stadium. Those are some of the strongest memories. And I remember the games, right? You remember some great games that you have, but really it's the time with your teammates and your family that you spent within the game that really makes for the special moments for me. And time will say something else. Time will talk about the catch. And look, it's a really cool thing, because not everyone wins championships. Not everyone gets to play on some amazing teams. But I do have a moment that baseball fans remember, and that's pretty cool.
That was a perfect way to close that up, man. That's crazy. And it's like awesome that same memory was replicated on the reverse side of it, that vantage point is a trip. You guys have anything? No,
I'm good.
This is usually where we would like plug something for you, but this is like there's no active business or
on our Christmas walk drunk again. That was me. I was drinking.
Yeah. I guess we'll see you at the bars. And
hey, I've got some great pictures from that day too. Yeah, we my brother and a few of my boys were out, and so we were walking around the streets. I heard Christmas walk used to be just crazy about 10 years ago. I heard they used to close off the streets, and you could just walk down PCH with cocktails in your hand. Can you imagine that? Right.
Man, you can't do it anymore. It's frowned upon. It's frowned upon. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Gary. We really appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, man. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Great interview.
This is a fun time to hang out with my boys, some boys from AC and fellow businessmen, and get to know you guys, and really kind of like get to introduce ourselves to the community in different ways. It's kind of cool.
Yep.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Please, bye.